Hello, this is George Sandman. I'm the founder and CEO of Growth Drive. And Growth Drive is a system used by business advisors to drive client profits, growth, and value. Now, we're also a community. Every week we get together to talk about all things business advisor, everything clients, cases, things we're seeing out in the world. Now, tune in here to this podcast, and you can join the conversation by scanning this QR code, passcode 867-5309. Jump into the conversation. Everyone's welcome. We're looking forward to having you. So here we go. On with the show.
I have a call once a month with a guy. He always reminds me of you, Joseph. One, he's very Jewish, but his name is David, and he moved from New York City to Israel, and he lives in Israel. And we just had a call this morning. He's a really interesting guy, but he's at the cutting edge. He's running like 2 or 3 Chat GTP 5 Pro accounts and doing automating all kinds of stuff, and just really fascinating. A programmer by um a developer by education. He didn't really he did more project management around developers, but he's just doing some really fascinating stuff with AI um and helping people think about data sets and how to look at them, and just really, really interesting.
Very cool. What's the application for? Is it specifically for large enterprise, or is it for small?
No, I mean, he's doing a lot of different things, but one of the ones we talked about today is he's taking whole data sets from a lower middle market company, putting it up in Google Cloud and running AI against it to create almost like a Power BI kind of situation, but automated, so that you can drill into all the data from any, you're making a cube over the data set, so you can really analyze the data any way you want. He gave the example of, look, how many of our shipments went out on time for the last 5 months, and then drilling down into it to find out, okay, did that, was that, I want to segregate shipments that actually ship versus pickups versus, which ones went to a store versus which ones went to a warehouse, and really analyze the data and drill down into it. Right. And so, and he's doing that. And then he's got another application where he's using, some cool stuff around, creating charts on an automatic basis. So you almost can you still have your set KPIs that you're managing on an ongoing basis, but you can really do an analysis with charts and drill into something. Show me sales for the last 5 months, divide, by each division, with who the salesperson was, or how it originated, right? And you can chart all that on the fly, right? And just look at it.
So is he structuring it like, is he training it through, you know, I guess, he's making his own LLM, or is he actually just training it via GPT, so to speak, to look at the data set that is being segregated?
Yeah, he's put a whole codex up in there that he is training, that's in a ChatGPT 5.0 Pro, so that he can train it all in this LLM. But it's also he's also connecting several pieces of he's using Google Cloud, I think, and he's connecting several pieces of Google's software together, their BI component, right, and some other things, and it's all coming together in an interesting way. So
Yeah, no, today you can actually connect. I mean, obviously everyone knows that you can connect through ChatGPT directly to external tools, right?
right, yep,
But generally, if you want data integrity and you don't want anyone outside to have access to it, you really got to be able to isolate that data. You don't want it, so to speak.
that's why it's
That's
in his own
100%.
cloud space with his own codex uploaded, so that he can do it.
Got it. Makes perfect sense.
Yeah,
Cool.
it's just really fascinating to see real applications of that, right? Just not just theoretical, hey, you can do this, but how is somebody actually using it, and pull it apart a little bit and talk about it, and, hopefully add some value while you're questioning it, but also learn from it, right?
Yeah, for sure. It's great
Yeah.
stuff.
Hey, George.
Good morning, guys. How are you?
Good.
Good
Just
morning.
just
I'm at
just getting out of the hotel and getting up for the morning.
yeah, it's 7 something here in Phoenix. I'm at the 40 strategy the 40 strategy growth workshop. I need more coffee.
Yeah, there you
It's been
go.
fantastic. Yeah, I'm going to give a quick. It is packed full of advisors and CEOs, and
Give our best to Carl.
I will, man. He's putting on a great show. I would recommend that if they do this again, you consider bringing a client out. They will get a ton. He's really put together an all-star cast of presenters. It's more of a conference, like a lot of presentations, and so I'm excited. Actually,
Yeah,
here,
nice.
a bunch of people you'll recognize are here. Carl's here at breakfast here. I'm going to turn this around. Hang on one sec. I've never done this on an iPad, but there we go. There's Carl. You're on the coffee Klatsch, man. These are a bunch of people. There's Ed Wonky, another familiar face.
Hey, there we go.
We have John is out here. A bunch of, it's a great group, and obviously beautiful surroundings.
Beautiful day. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's been outstanding.
I bet it's exactly the same temperature as we have here in Milwaukee.
Yes, absolutely. The cactus thrive on miserable cold. Yeah, man. So, yeah, and Carl, as I do, is keeping an unrelenting schedule. It's 7:30. It's time to get going.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, man. So sounds like you guys were just talking about AI.
We were just having a chat about a guy I had a call with this morning, and it just sort of morphed into a more general chat. Yep.
Got it. Cool.
Yep. Are you gonna stay with us for a little while, George, or are you jumping
I'll
off
stay with you
again?
guys for a few minutes. Absolutely.
Okay. Good.
Yeah.
Good.
I'm gonna put in my AirPods to
Yeah.
spare you
So
guys the background noise.
George, how long is the conference? It's a couple of days?
2 days.
Yes, it's 2 full days.
Oh, nice.
2 full days. There's Ed. Of course, now.
It was
Yeah,
yesterday and
That's
today.
fine. So the background isn't here.
And I got 2 big,
Somebody needs to be muted.
got background on. Steve, is that you?
It's not me.
Oh, is that me? I'm sorry.
Gallery view. There we go.
That's better.
Cool. Here, I have Ed here
Yep.
somehow.
Hey, Ed.
Here. There.
There he is.
We're alive and well. Yeah, man. We had a good time.
George, you could take your iPad and turn it sideways and you'll get a landscape view, I think.
Yeah, I said it was the first time doing this on an iPad.
There you go.
There you go.
Hey,
And we
look
have
at you guys both in the same camera shot.
That's right. With a palmetto, with a palmetto hanging over us. Yeah. It's really been a terrific. Yesterday, we started on a journey talking about the fundamental role of the CEO. A gentleman who's the author of a book, A CEO Does 3 Things, which is evidently a New York Times and Wall Street Journal bestseller, and
Nice.
which is now on my Kindle for the ride home. And then we got in. I mean, it's been a terrific. We got into brand. We had a process engineer talk about the importance of considering the human element in process engineering. She was really great, linking culture. How well-defined processes, escalation procedures, et cetera, actually clear chaos and allow people to shine. And I ended up in a conversation with her about, we talk about the concept of having dignity in your job. And she was great, wasn't she? She was, and she had the toughest. She had to back cleanup after lunch. You're like, really, process engineering after lunch? Everybody was riveted. She was really
Trey Taylor, George.
I'm
Trey
sorry?
Taylor, is that her name?
No,
her name was Eddie Clevitt.
Oh, okay.
Klevit, yeah.
ADIKLEVIT.
Oh, okay. I was just
Uh,
looking up a CEO does three things. Is Trey Taylor is the
That's
author.
Trey Taylor.
That's
Yeah,
Trey
that's
Taylor.
Trey Taylor.
That's
Yeah.
Trey Taylor. Yeah.
And then Tommy Breedlove is here. Tommy's terrific. He's with oh man, I need another cup of coffee. But Tommy Breedlove out of North Georgia. He's out Elite.
Yeah.
Elite. And they're just it's a great group of people, and really interesting to have business owners and advisors at the same event. And
Nice.
and Carl does. If anyone been to the AM and AA, you know how they do one-on-ones. Carl's doing one-on-ones. So yesterday I met with a bunch of all the speakers met with a bunch of attendees. Yeah.
I mean, in the morning we had two attendees, one-on-ones, and then later in the morning we did another. They had a talk, and then we did another one-on-one with two other people.
Yeah, it breaks up the tempo. It's really well designed. Carl's done as we would expect, right?
Yeah.
Our own call. He's doing a great job. He and his team.
And
So-
the team was really dynamite.
If you wanted to give a client a big shot in the arm of things to think about, I mean, the talk on brand yesterday.
The brand guy was
So the brand guy was
Jason Sherwood.
yeah, he's worked with some very shiny accounts, very shiny.
Yeah.
But really, you know, the perspective he got into in just an hour, he got into positioning, to differentiation, to the importance of pricing on value,
pricing,
right?
value pricing.
Value
Yeah.
pricing.
On
You
that.
know, it was so much more. He didn't really even talk about brand. Ultimately, he talked about what brand meant and what a strong brand can get you. And he and I ended up at dinner last night talking about the fact, you know, we got into my perspective, or my description that brand is the outward manifestation of culture. And he was 100%. It's a fascinating guy and a fun dinner, right? The wine is what we had, some super Tuscan flowing like a river, frankly. I didn't order a single thing. Yeah. Food and wine just kept coming.
The best thing he did was he got everybody to start thinking about two words to describe
Yeah. What are two words?
words that describe you
So,
and what you're doing.
so for Nike, for example, he had,
What was the speed?
it was proven speed, I believe. He
Yeah.
came up with the Nike racing shoe line. I think it's proven speed.
Yeah.
Because so many Olympians wear Nikes to win. And so that was the quick positioning tagline. And it's kind of unassailable, which is,
Oh yeah,
that was the kind of,
So,
it was awesome.
so would annoyingly bald count?
only for you, Eric.
Okay.
Eric,
Got it.
Eric, I'm not sure about the annoying. The balls you've got down. You're going to have to work on
Hey,
annoying.
Eric, we had the final guy that spoke, a fellow by the name of Scott Ballard, talked to everybody,
Yeah.
embracing your true identity. Who really are you? And therefore, how do you demonstrate you when you are working
Yeah.
with prospects?
Again, I go back to annoyingly bald.
Yeah. Okay. And this one you're going to have to write down annoying. No, he did a great job. He did a
was
great job. The
incredible.
psychology of getting rid of how our worst inner voice about
Yeah.
ourselves and embracing. And he put it simply, you know, how would God describe you? And
Yeah.
and if you don't believe in God, think about how love would describe you, or you know, it's not a religious thing.
Right.
And but how does your
But come out of yourself and have an external view of what would somebody look at. Yeah.
Yeah, and it was powerful because we ended up it's basically a praise session. You know,
Oh,
we were all yelling our positives,
Yeah. I
and
mean,
everybody in the room was standing up and yelling their
whatever
positives.
what they're positive,
It was-
you know, with a
It was
one
powerful.
word or two word item. I mean, one of the things that was unique, he had, and I had talked earlier in the day just socially. I'm not realizing he was going to be the last speaker, and so I picked the word that describes me, and I said giver. And so I explained what I do and all that. He said, "No, that's not the right word."
Yeah, no, Ed,
He changed the word to
noble.
noble.
And he's spot on, right? Ed is a noble man. Love you, man.
Yeah,
And he's not merely a CEO coach. This man built one of the largest insurance agencies, or insurance agencies in America. What did we say? 4,000 agents.
Yeah, 4,200.
4,200 agents, and he's now a coach to guys like the CEO of Daimler-Benz. I mean, he's not messing around.
Yeah. Yeah. He's like a Marshall Goldsmith. Yeah.
Well,
exactly.
and he said he started with working as a coach to Carl 8 years ago when Carl
Yeah.
first was getting himself launched.
So these are powerhouse
These are
speakers,
just incredible people.
and a lot of he's done a good job of blending conference, like speaking, listening, watching slides, the traditional conference, none of which are infomercials, which is really nice.
Right.
Yeah.
So they're all very substantive from serious players that I would introduce to anyone.
Yeah.
And,
Wow.
and then with some activities, some actual workshop activities, and they have a gorgeous. They've actually published a magazine like book. I'm sorry, I don't have it with me,
Yeah, it's
with
phenomenal.
all of the bios and places to take notes and what do the speakers want you to think about.
Sweet.
So it's cool. Yeah.
And where are you guys? What hotel?
The Hilton Tapatio on 7th Avenue or 7th Street in Phoenix, Arizona.
You're in downtown.
Downtown-ish. Yeah.
Yeah.
Downtown-ish.
Got it.
Yeah. It's cool. It's pretty.
Yeah,
As you can
nice.
see in the background, it's really pretty. It has a golf course, which
Phoenix is one of my favorite towns. I could hang out in Phoenix anytime.
Yeah.
so we're starting the day with a talk from an AI superstar.
Right.
And more to follow on that. But and we did, speaking of AI, I had a demo of Claire inside Claire 2 yesterday, and she is getting smart fast. So we're going to do a bunch of training. We'll start next week. We'll do some hardcore training. We're already doing it, but we're in warm-ups. We're going to go into a real training race next week. And we're dropping a couple of software regs. One dropped or is dropping today that we're starting to stitch. And this is actually based on an investment banker and an evaluator and a private equity group collaborating. And it's a fascinating set of cases. They've loaded a bunch of cases, real cases, into the system. And it surfaced a couple of opportunities to more tightly think range of value, financial data, simulator, and then the reports that those power. But we're going to release the ability. We already had the ability to manually input a multiple. So what we're adding is we're pushing that not just in level 1, but throughout the system, making the range of value synced up with both level 1 and level 2 at your choice. You can toggle between the two. And push those values into the simulator, and in simulator gives you 2 different opportunities to sync simulator with equity value planner. Right, very cool. How fast do you need to grow? It's already synced with financial data. So the SGR, what's your ROE and retention rate, and how much cash do you have available to grow, and we're going to put in the ability we are releasing, I think in part 2 of this new rev, the ability to manually input an increase in strategic capacity, which I had limited to a maximum of 10% a year, because I believe that is still the responsible line. But if someone thinks that they can grow, they're going to get a cash infusion. That's the use case, right? And they're going to be able to grow their strategic capacity by 20% for a short period. I mean, we're doing it linearly, but you can start looking at year 1, year 2 value impact of a dramatically accelerated strategic capacity. And so it's good. It's cool, guys. And then obviously pushing that through the reports. And we've done a lot of work on the level 2 report. Now, and I'll finish my diatribe. Sorry, guys. I'm again hogging the mic. With this investment banker who's using Claire to take the simulator and level 2 report and generate some very, very powerful, some really cool deliverables for their clients. And he has taken an 8-week process and compressed it into a matter of hours, and they are thrilled. Accurate, to have accurate this information accurately and reliably in a matter of hours is very good for them. So,
Yeah,
George, how's the investment banker applying applying it?
so what they were really trying to do, well, in this case was to say, okay, this is a business that is going to attract we're going to position as a strategic acquisition. And so we want to be able to show two things. One, how the use of capital, using the capital impacts the value of the business, and how an outsized increase in revenue. Because you've got to work on strategic capacity, and revenues will follow. Don't push the rope,
Sure.
right? And that's how they're using it, and to give the client some preliminary perspectives on the changes, the improvements, the redesign that they'll need to make in the business in order to hit those marks. So setting proper expectations on the buyer side, setting proper expectations with the senior leadership team on the performance that they're going to be expected to deliver. So I hope that answered your question, Joseph.
No, it does. It does. The only thing it brings up for me is, one thing that I know from personal experience is that deal structure has a huge impact on the transaction value.
oh yeah,
Right. So I'm just asking because, I'm trying to understand how an investment banker would focus on strategic capacity versus, whatever transaction structure.
Yeah. Well, transaction structure is critically important. Eric, I'm just sorry to interrupt. And that's something we're going to be looking at. We can get data on what a business owner, I want to say this very carefully, might expect to see in terms of terms. Sorry, as terms in a potential deal. So that we can start educating the business owner as to terms that are being seen in similar transactions. Now, Clarity isn't really an M&A prep tool, but I think that if we can do that elegantly and easily with good data, then that might be an interesting addition to the platform.
I also think, guys, no, that's okay. I was just going to comment. I think there's perceived value and there's actual value, right? And so that's an important distinction between what you're talking about. You can have the same amount of money flowing in the transaction under two different structures, and somebody will perceive one as much more valuable than the other one, even though they get the same exact amount of money, right? And so,
exactly.
It's interesting that you say that, Eric. I had a conversation at one of my one-on-ones with a gentleman who's running a services firm that is quite successful, and he's contemplating a transaction. And we got into that was an important part of the conversation.
Right.
Yeah, man.
Yeah, totally. Right. And I say this all the time. People will say, oh, the best way to get money is to do a third-party transaction. And I'll say, yeah, but when you look at all the nuances of an ESOP transaction, you can actually get to the same dollar amount under an ESOP transaction. It's just going to look a whole lot differently, right? Well, there's going to be different level of risk in it, and there's going to be
you've got more risk and everything.
Right.
You assume the seller.
Right. But the dollar amount might be the same. Right. Yeah. And so you got to understand what people are trying to solve for, right? Again, not to get into a really deep conversation, we got to be careful when we say value, because there's actual value and there's perceived value, right?
That's well, and there's and then there's that third value. It's the owner's perceived value of the business. But we hopefully take care of that at the beginning of during discovery.
Yeah, for sure.
So, all right, gentlemen, I'm going to.
You guys go.
Something to eat. Any questions before I drop off? Anything I can do to help?
Yeah. How come Ed's looking sharper than you are?
It's not hard to do, dude. It's not hard to do because he's Ed. All right, awesome.
Enjoy, guys.
Yeah, it's just perfect out here to work.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to drop off.
Just a little bit jealous.
Yeah.
Thanks, guys.
Hey, I would recommend watch your email. This is terrific, a very, very well done and valuable event.
Tell Carl congratulations.
I will.
All right, guys.
Thanks, man.
Thanks.
Be good.
Take care.
Yeah, Eric, every transaction I've ever, or acquisition I've ever been involved in or been a part of, there's so many nuances. I mean, is it
Oh,
a
for sure.
broker-led transaction? Is it an off-market transaction? Is the owner, checking out? Is he looking to stay on, or one owner looking to stay on? It's so hard to define, what it's called the transaction value is, because everybody's
Yeah.
situation is different.
And that was my only point, Joseph. I wasn't trying to be super philosophical. I was just trying to make sure when we talk about these things, and especially since people watch this kind of stuff afterwards, we got to be clear about what we mean by transaction value. Are we talking about the actual value, the dollar amount that gets transacted, or are we talking about the perceived value of the transaction? Because whether there might be non-monetary things that happen in the structure that make it, ESOP versus a third-party sale is a great example. Third-party sale, I get all my money all at once. There's a benefit to that is not, we can measure it monetarily by adding a risk factor into the dollar amount and bring them down. But when you look at the paper, it says $10 million here, $10 million here, but they're not equal. Right.
Eric, we are in violent agreement.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. And the problem, Joseph, is that most of our clients don't understand these subtleties, right? They don't understand that there could be 30 different ways to structure a deal, and you could make it work for them, and they're just looking at it going, yeah, but I wanted this dollar amount. Hold on a second. Like, is that the most important thing? And then, what you also said you wanted this and this and this. We try to make everything, as human beings, we often oversimplify things down to, what did I pay, right? Well, what you paid may not be the best measure of what the value was of the transaction, or what you bought, what you sold it for, right? Whether you're on the paying or the giving side, right? The receiving or the giving side.
Totally true.
Yeah. Joe, what wisdom do you have for us today?
I just processing the capabilities. Just because we can doesn't mean we should, right?
Yeah.
But if you look at some of the BEI stuff and the owner-based planning exit strategy, where they're tying key man plans integral into the the exit plan for the owner, I think it's important to have those measurables. And what George has talked about is having those tangible, third-party, industry-specific. I'm assuming they're going to have some tie back to what's possible based on, keeping that individual engaged and, locked in, if you will. I think it's a golden parachute type of program. So, could that be an extension of that DEI owner-based plan that then gives metrics to the continuation agreements with those key members?
Yeah.
The other thing that
Go ahead.
I was thinking about, I just met our meeting with some owners last week, and one of the comments made was they want to be able to, I think I may have mentioned this last week too, but they want to be able to shop in the same town that they sold their business in. And
Go into the store and not be shot. And
yeah, or not, just be able to look everybody in the eye, right?
Yeah, right.
And
Yep.
so I think there's all too often we forget about that, that there is some empathy and some need to leave a legacy. They're not just going to disappear island somewhere. They're going to live in the community. They're going to have the same relationships, and so how does that long term play itself out? So that's where that numbers can, numbers are, this guy's like, I more money than I ever can in his mind spend, right? And so then it becomes like, okay, what are those other drivers in the transaction that we we get so wound up on the technical side of things, and yet emotionally, we just got to remind ourselves there's people involved.
Yeah.
you
Yeah,
know?
I thought we had it. Stephen, you may want to comment on this, right? But I thought it was really interesting when we were at the summit and Madison Insurance talked, right? And a difference between, here's something that we all think of as fairly standard insurance on something, right? But they presented a whole new way to look at insurance that wasn't the standard way that everybody else would present to look at insurance, that you could insure something and still get that money back if you never use it, right? And just a really interesting dynamic. And so again, it's that kind of view of something that reminds me, boy, we're not looking at things correctly. We often look at the buckets that we've built by this is the way we've always done it, or by assumption, and we're not actually tearing apart the bucket a little bit and going, hold on a second, maybe there's another way to do this, right?
Well, it's also, I mean, it kind of is forming this very big through line for this whole conversation, in that you can't look at something in a specific way if you don't know that that angle is an angle you can take. You don't know what you don't
Right.
know.
For sure.
So this applies to, owners not knowing what their buyers are looking for. This applies to, us taking an outside view of ourselves and, seeing, what we see. It applies to, as Joe said, how they want to interact in the community with this big pile of cash that they just got from their transaction. There's all these different things that if you don't have either perspective or previous knowledge, or you're in the industry and understand all of these concepts, like it kind of even flows into AI, right? You don't even know what to ask it because people, to the dollar amounts, the dollar amounts not being equal. They don't know that because they haven't been, where we are, involved in what we're doing. And that's kind of our role. We're there to provide that context, to provide that additional education, and really to shine a light on the places that they realistically needed to be looking at to begin with, but just didn't know to look.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's something that I'm going through, myself, because as I'm trying to, scale up, and I am starting to get a bit of traction, but there's some of these things that I'm discovering, in this kind of, initial path that if I had known, months ago, it would have completely changed the course, but I didn't know back then. So it's
Listen,
really everywhere.
I think the underlying theme is really like it's right in front of us, right in our face, and sometimes we're looking at something we just don't see it. Same way a business is a living organism, or a human being has many, many parts as a living organism. Same thing with a business. Same thing with any transaction. This concept of siloed information and siloed knowledge that is going to give you your outcome. I mean, that's going by the wayside. There's a clear understanding that there are so many facets of a transaction that you really have to have groupthink or team think in order to be able to have the most successful transaction. In any case, I know specifically of one guy that I'm very close with today. Today he's a VC, but he used to own an e-commerce firm. And Joe, this is going back to your point a couple of minutes ago. He sold his business for just short of $100 million about 4 years ago. Maybe it was maybe 4 or 5 years ago, something like that. It's a big exit. And I remember speaking to him at an e-commerce conference where at the time where all the PE aggregators were coming out and doing all these roll-ups of e-commerce firms. And he asked me what I did, and I was just talking to him a little bit about exit planning. And he was like, "I wish I would have spoken to a guy like you beforehand." And
Yeah.
what was his reason? What was his reasoning? It's amazing. I mean, he was part of the Jewish community working here in the New York, Metro New York area, and most of the people that were working for his business were part of the community. And the aggregators that bought his business blew it up. I mean, within, I would say, he said, I can't remember if he said 12 or 18 months, but something in that range, they shut down. The business closed. And he got nothing but total flack from all the people that were let go and all the community people. I think he said he had well over 100 employees, people that he lives with, that he knows with, that he sees on a regular basis in
What you
religious
were talking about,
affairs.
Joe. Yep.
Yeah. And that was just, he said it was terrible. It was terrible. He said that it wasn't worth all the money that he made, wasn't worth what he went through for the following, 2, 3 years. So
Yeah, I was looking up a post on LinkedIn that I saw the other day that I thought was really apropos to this exact conversation. Two quotes from it. Most owners think about exit planning the way they think about packing for a trip, something you do right before,
yeah,
right? And the other one was um, uh, if you wait until you're burned out, tired, or ready to retire to start preparing, you've already left millions on the table. Those two quotes really resonated with me about how I see a lot of people. And again, we're doing growth and exit planning, right? And I think a lot of us are, right? But it's how I see a lot of people. They'll talk about growth. What they really mean is, I want to grow my revenue, right? And but in terms of planning for an eventual exit, their idea to that is, well, I'll just keep growing and growing and growing, and of course that's going to make my company more valuable. And they're right in a way. If that growth in revenue does translate really into growth in EBITDA, it will affect the value. But they're only affecting one aspect of the value, a linear increase in EBITDA, and um not an exponential increase in EBITDA and a multiple, right? And so they're not doing the real work that accelerates growth. They're just growing.
Yeah,
There-
I had a personal experience with that. We had a environmental contracting company, 45 employees, and we had kind of built in 92 to 96 a nice little platform. We were doing about $6 or $7 million in sales, incredibly good profits. The federal program has had the headline on it was 98. So I'm trying to find a replacement product. And I said, hey, how about going into the environmental in the water wastewater treatment plant work? Because it was environmental. We were doing Yankee tanks and also just doing environment cleanup associated with some industrial waste. Some fairly complicated stuff. But then we say, well, we can handle that. The reality that went awful, and I wish I had known myself or this group before, was the fact that growth for growth's sake wasn't necessarily good, and it wasn't strategic. It was low margin, high competition, beating on the engineer and the contractor were at odds most times because the owner's standing there with a fixed bag of money, and the opportunity gain for them to get the project done was real, but it wasn't driving. We weren't going to go wait to build something based on the fact that to get that property cleaned up. This case was like, I got this pot of money to fix the problem, whatever that might be. But I just distinctly remember the cultural difference in the line of business, even though they both environmental. One was open shop, the other one was union or prevailing wage. It was a awful experience. I ended up being able to spin it up, but we were doing $3 or $4 million of business, but it was like a fraction of our margin compared to what we were doing. So I think the strategic intent and the whole trying to grow and trying to exit, it's very, very complicated and oftentimes misaligned based on just trying to find replacement growth on basically a cyclical product line. We all have them. I mean, it's just like, when do you jump to the next product line and what makes the best transition? So during that growth phase, I wasn't exiting, but it was the people involved, and they go back to the people we had to hire were a much different cat foreman, driver, kind of like, versus a more of a boutique service, extreme service related. move something, you write it down, but you wouldn't necessarily charge for it. On the prevailing wage side of public, everything had to be, sent up the ladder for approval and whatnot. So anyways, growth sometimes can get complicated, especially when you're trying to develop something outside of your core product line.
Yeah, I mean, how many of us have experienced people who, to your point, Joe, grow top line, but it doesn't really improve bottom line substantially, right? Or not even on a linear factor. Oh, I grew by 10% on my top line, but my bottom line grew by 2%, right? That's not
Well,
helpful growth.
yeah, and culture it just eats you alive, especially if it's not a real linear. And it's hard, it's just expensive to establish yourself in a new market. And, um, I don't know.
Yeah.
Was my experience. And then later on, I ended up rolling out or closing down a business and, I sold that one. And then when I sold it, my point was, people were coming to my office. I wasn't no longer the owner, and you're complaining about management, and it was awful. It was like
Now you can't change it.
no, yeah, I was like 9 months in there, and I couldn't wait to get out because it was like, man.
At least before, when they complained to you, you could do something about it.
Yeah,
right?
well, it's like jumping on Joseph's comment is that, if I'd known what was going to happen, I would have done it. And I would have fought a little harder for it. But I'd burn out. I was like, you know what? I want to do something different. I don't know. I just and young and dumb but it just the burnout is a real thing. And if we can get these guys to just include others, which is so hard to do, right? And that's where we have the alignment report. But if we can get them to start thinking about how do I share the insomnia and then lessen the fatigue related to the burnout. And but I'm taking guilt complex of taking too long a vacation away, and the business sort of things happen while you're gone, and it's like, well, that's the last time I got to take a full week vacation, right? It's like there's all these things that happen that you sort of like you get in your mind and your crawl that you'll never do again. And I don't know, it's
or worse yet, Joe, 10 years ago, I took a vacation for 3 weeks and something bad happened. So I'm never doing that again. And now it's 10 years later and you got a whole new team, but you won't do it now. Right. And
I love the people that are disciplined around like a 1 week more per year off. I think that's a really interesting strategy. One of my clients says like he'll take 1 week off. I think he's up to 6 weeks off now. He's been doing it progressively. And so I think that's a really good way to ratchet up the level of expectation on both sides. Right.
I actually met somebody a while ago with a formula that I really wanted to do, and his formula was he was an advisor, and his formula was I work 12 weeks in every quarter, and I take 1 week off in every quarter, so that essentially he thought about it in a 90-day cycle of just I'm going to make sure that I get some whether it's a week or whether I do a 5-day or a 4-day weekend here, but I do a longer one over here. But every quarter I'm going to get some time away so that I'm refreshed. So I come back and I'm ready. Right. I just thought that was a really interesting way to look at that.
So another topic. So I'm wondering, this is my premise. We have a lot of, and George looks at EOS and, kind of there's some limitations to what you could do with it. But if you look at the smoke, there's fire. When you look at owners that are wanting to invest in themselves, wanting to invest in their team, willing to spend those dollars up front on something like an operating system, let's call it Pinnacle or whatever. And the fact that there is a plateau that's reached because the model is, and I've taught it for years, is that you're all your ideas should be coming from the people in the room, right? That have a collective knowledge. Oftentimes, what they're working on, they're basically vice president of manufacturing, and the parallel to that is R&D. Well, R&D is only working on the projects that manufacturing runs into, right? They're not out there as independent R&D. So what happens is they really good at economizing whatever it is, and they're
They
really
improve, but they never innovate.
yeah. So when you have a program like the EOS model, and it really encourage you to continue improvement, but the innovation is some can be trapped. So what the thoughts were, I just doing a bunch of research on this for the AI, but could we have our project become a rock? Okay. So the work of doing the initial assessment, leadership alignment assessment, becomes a rock associated with the implementation. So we work hand in glove with the implementer, because what they're trying to do is how can I preserve my relationship and do the quarterlies and annuals and that stuff. That's a hand-to-hand combat thing. It's not very scalable. It is to an extent, very profitable for them, but yet how do we make it safe for us to come in and develop a rock related to getting these ideas that we have, strategic ideas, to the team in a meaningful, time-bound situation where they can come in and say, we need to inject some third party, and then get noted among the implementers that this is a great way to increase the thought bubble, with the very low risk, because we're not really coming in there we don't want to take the client. We want to explain to them it's worth continuing the investment. It's not like we're starting from square one. They've invested it usually on average they're, $5,000 to $10,000 a day. They're doing 5 days a year. They're somewhere between $50,000 and $80,000. So they've already kind of proven that they're willing to invest. Now we get their team to somehow see how they can utilize our tool with the team, right? And then the owner ends up getting even more benefit. The hero in the story is the owner, or it could be the US implementer, but let's hang with the owner, is that the problem they're dealing with is their team needs to think more strategically. The implementer, they don't want to upset that relationship, because it's good. Oftentimes they're pretty damn loyal to each other, and yet what happens is the leadership team sees this lack of R&D, but they're just responding to the goals that are set out in front of them. Okay. But oftentimes that 3-year plan, in my experience of doing that, it's however much we try to make that clear, there's a whole process for read through things and, trying to get everybody, as a facilitator, what if we could provide ourselves in a clear quarterly rock level, little thing, plug us in. And the other thing they run into is that on an annual basis, they'll open up the trunk and say, okay, anything goes, and then they close it, and then they're just executing on a plan on an annual basis. But so you get this whole buildup of, okay, if you don't introduce it in the annual, then there's no other place to bring it along on the entire year. But the idea here is we're going to look at just a quarterly 90-day plan in which we come in and get all this thinking done, in which then they can use it for future planning, and expanding the relationship. But I just feel like I'm a little blocked right now by the implementers that are seeing us as a potential competitor, but I think they ought to see it as a enhancement to the facilitation of, because they're not by design, the program's not wanting them to go in and facilitate specific to the industry. They're a facilitator. It's just the communication between everything and making sure that the
They're
the
systemic versus
train,
they're
the train
systemic
runs on
versus
time. You know.
yeah.
Yeah, they're facilitators.
Yeah.
So
So
Joe,
that's
just
an
to
idea. Thrown
I
out
got
there.
it. Just to clarify, so make sure I understand, and maybe the people who are listening, I think what I heard you say is you want to find a way to collaborate with the EOS implementers rather than them feel like you're competing with them. Yes, that's a simplistic point, not to oversimplify, but just to get the clarity of that's the point you're trying to make. Yes.
Correct.
Yeah, and so your point as you started your commentary was that they innovate, they're more fixers within versus innovators without, and that's where we may be able to collaborate. Am I hitting it close?
Yes.
Okay,
Sure.
got it. Interesting.
So I have a question for you, Joe. Is this something that you're noticing more recently? Because generally, the function of an EOSI is not really to step in the integrator role. What difference does it make to him what the rocks are?
Did I say that integrator role, implementer role?
You said implementer, yes.
Implementer, yeah. So the EOS implementer, yeah. So
Why would he be threatened? Because what you do is totally out of the scope of what his job responsibility is supposed to be.
you're correct.
I think a lot of people, I just comment that, Joseph, you're right. Again, this goes back to our value versus perception of value thing. I think a lot of times, even though it seems like the lanes are well defined, that people spill into other lanes, right? And there's a perception of spilling into other lanes. So the implementers want to be a highly valued advisor, and so they'll often try to spill into the consulting lane, if you will, the advisor lane,
Yeah,
rather
that's
than just
you know,
the implementer.
and the
This
reason
is my this,
the reason I'm asking Joe is because I know your involvement with EOS. I mean that's traditionally, especially if you ever had a conversation with Gino, that's a huge no-no. For an implementer to step in the integrator role and to give advice and whatever. I mean, in an ideal situation, he can use his experience to help them ask better questions to get to a better answer.
A great
But to actually
facilitator doesn't give the opinion. Yep.
correct, to actually step in that role, I mean, unless you know something I don't know, and maybe it's changing now that after, PE has taken over EOS, but um,
so
that,
yeah, right. That's a good point. No, I think certainly with their sales accelerator relationship, I think they're going to stay in their lane. So here's my thoughts. I'm just sharing the screen. So EOS, BEI, and that's another thing that BEI's I really continue to look at that to be a strong relationship between both Growth Drive and but you see, so EOS delivers operational traction, but plateaus when vision lacks exit. BEI locks in ownership value with time transferable plans. So why is that important? Well, time transferable is, if I'm sitting there in a senior role in the organization and I'm not seeing much activity on the owner, I just had a relationship blow up with the owner's 62, 63, and he's told everybody he's going to stay in the helm until 70. Well, that's not what he communicated earlier. So there's kind of an exodus thing going on over time. But if we could get a transferable plan in place, and then we lock in the hidden and the clarity, simulating, what are the benchmarks and whatnot, that would be the good. But I'm looking at this application for all of us, saying, there's a huge community out there of fairly tight, and if we could see ourselves as a complementary piece and work on that and see ourselves as a team partner. EOS runs the engine, BEI fuels the exit, right? And then Growth Drive predicts the ROI. I think that's a really well structured deal.
Could you copy this post into the chat for this conversation? Because I'm sure there are people watching that would love to have the ability to get this, right?
It's
Anyways,
interesting.
but I'm just musing right now because I think relationship with
Yeah.
with the CPAs are good, but if you really look at who's really out there, if you look at smokestack and where there's smoke, there's fire, and then they're spending money already. So you go where you're already. So what we're trying to do is move from chaos to cash out, 10 to 20 advisory impact, 80% MA ready. And the only coach you need to succeed in sell and exit is. But anyways, that's kind of my current thoughts.
Joe, it's
Yeah.
interesting. I actually have another question for you, Joe, because my again, my personal experience, and I'd love to hear everybody else's opinion on this, is that you know the challenge is if a company really needs an EOS implementer to help them install a management operating system, it's probably way too early for us to be able to do our work. In other words, they've got to have some framework of managing day-to-day operations and being able to communicate with one another before you're going to come in there and tell them, okay, now these are the rocks that need to be implemented so that you can actually execute or learn to execute, better, whether it's, from the perspective of exit planning, whatever. Yes, generally we can have, I should say, we can have a general conversation about how to develop rocks and how to develop ROI and how to develop transferable value so that you can maximize, your stake as an owner. But those two things, I don't know if they're aligned at the same time. So I'm just still trying to understand from your perspective, Joe, what it is that you're trying to say, that you want to work with them, or there's a conflict there. I'm not following.
So in talking with implementers, they don't see why they would involve anybody else.
I'm not saying they're wrong.
Okay. And I think you make a good point, and that the the organization isn't ready for this kind of advice until they really get a good feel of how they're going to operate, just and and hold themselves more, gradually become more of a mature organization. So perhaps, Joseph, this is helpful because I'm saying 2 years, and you got to spend 2 years in EOS, maturation process, and then your team's going to be leveling out, and then's the time that we start introducing new challenges, new additional way to kind of like think about growth, and then prepare for, perhaps it's a matter of having to 86 or get rid of a line of business that, based on analysis, and this is not a good way to spend your energy. And so, but without that emotional maturity, or it's called EOS maturity, they wouldn't be able to handle the change.
Yeah,
That makes
I
sense?
totally agree with you. I would never even attempt to step in unless they've done their first annual, right? And my guess is, even after they've done the first annual, generally the second year is really just making sure they've got, right person, right
In their
seat.
stride. Yep.
Yeah. And then they're off to the races. And, it's not, I mean, everybody knows that kind of when they get closer to the end of 2 years, a lot of companies end the relationship with the implementer because they don't see him really working over there. That actually might be a better way to approach them and say, the implementers, as you approach the end of your second year, there might be an opportunity for us to work together where we can step in and help them identify the rocks. And that might give you an extra year or two runway to work with the company.
Yeah, I think that's the key, Joseph, is can you bring them along to stay in? You're now giving something to that EOS implementer that they get to stay around longer, rather than, we saw the same thing with Action Coach. They had a 12 to 18 month run with training somebody, and then they get to the end of that and people would say, well, what do we need them for anymore? Right? It's the same concept. Now you've educated and you put the systems in. Now what do I need you for anymore? And if we can help them stay in the game, that's a great thing.
That would be the way I
more-
would. That's the way I would approach it. I would approach it. You
Yeah.
know, as you reach the end of your expected engagement, you see things are kind of settling down, and they really don't need you as much anymore. That's kind of when you can bring us in, so that we can extend, you know, your relationship with them for another year or two, or perhaps a bit longer.
Yeah, and the recycling component is really by design. It's a 2-year relationship, a 2-year rollover. That's just in the playbook from EOS's perspective. So how do you get that one more bite of the apple, if you will, and also leave them a good spot so they can grow, because they're kind of in a good neutral spot. So
Yeah.
Well,
Hey,
we know how they're doing it. We know how they're doing it. The answer is they're stepping out of the implementer role and they're doing all kinds of other things, whether it's
this is my
profit
point. Yeah.
first or consulting or this or that. They're
Yep.
stepping into it. But the fact of the matter is that they may have a trusted relationship with the company, but the vast majority of them are incapable of stepping into that secondary role.
Right.
And they do a very poor job.
yeah, because typically they're good process people, but then you get them off the process, then they're kind of a little just.
But they may be perfect with an innovator, paired up with an innovator to actually extend that time, to your point, Joseph. Hey, we're at an hour, guys. I just want to, in the sense of everybody's time and everything else, do we want to quick go around and just what's some great key takeaways from this? Stephen, what's a key takeaway from our talk today?
Honestly, a lot of it was stuff that I was, relatively familiar with, but then this conversation over EOS and the pairing between, what we provide and kind of collaborating with these EOS implementers, which I've already made some really good, networking connections with those. That's a really fantastic idea for something that isn't just a referral relationship, but actually adds to both sides. I think that that's probably my biggest takeaway. That's something that I'm probably going to pursue. That
I think it's a
really good.
win-win-win, right? The
It
client
really
wins
is.
from it too, right? Yep.
Yes.
Cool. Joseph, what's your key takeaway from today's conversation?
Yeah, I think it's going back to that original point, and that is, by necessity, you're doing a disservice to your client if you don't have what I would call a full team, an organism, so to speak,
Yep.
that allows you to have multiple perspectives and bring in, fresh thoughts and ideas to make sure that you've surfaced all the things that really want or are needed to be covered by the owner. And in absence of that, you're number one, you're not doing a good job, and you're doing a disservice to your client. So I think that becomes an imperative going forward.
Nice. Joe?
Earlier on, thank you so much. I really appreciate it, Mike. And so what I'm willing to do for your investment of time is I'm going to package up this, the 2-year thought, and approach a couple of my former clients of to become EOS implementers, and approach them on that whole idea. The other one, we go back to the conversation with George and Ed, is the CEO does 3 things. I think that was really a good book then to give away as gifts, because we ought to continue to think about how we approach these guys to think differently. And that's a really simple way to do it. Maybe it's a Christmas gift, if you will. And then they're learning some new facilitation ideas out there. That whole interviewing and having owners present in the room, I think that is very powerful. There's feedback on both sides of it. An owner gets a chance to think differently, and as a gift, or you're obviously, depending on what the financial arrangements are, but bringing them to something like that to kind of expand their minds is just a great long-term relationship piece that you can do for your customer, and keep them around for quite a while. So anyways, that's what I got.
Awesome. My key takeaway is going to sound like a broken record, because I probably use this about half the time, but my favorite part about Coffee Klatsch is that iron sharpens iron, and it's fun to be around other smart people and just see their perspective on something. Joe, your question about EOS, Joseph, the commentary we were having at the very start about AI, right? Just there, it's fun to hear the different perspectives on things because it helps to really form and be open to being better, right? We improve by listening to others and learning and then applying some of those things. Joe, I just submit to you, do the work you committed to, but post something back in Circle about what you found, because I bet this could apply to a lot of people in our community, right?
Yeah.
If you figure it out a little bit, you don't have to share the whole thing, but hey guys, you should consider, whatever you're willing to share, but you should consider thinking about it this way, and here's why, right? That'd be awesome.
Yeah, the lack of friction that could possess is huge. Or I think CPA, there's a whole lot of friction there that I'm just trying to. It just too many things have to go right. Versus this is like, I'm supposed to be done anyways. This gives me another year or whatever, and I get credit for bringing something in.
Or even if I think I might get another year, maybe this helps solidify the next year versus maybe it's maybe it's a 30% and now I can make it a 70%.
Well, here's the deal. We, as the thought bubble guys, right? We gotta need someone to execute, especially when to scale what you're doing and work at that $300 to $500 an hour range. And you need somebody in there. And so, by the way, we can get you 2 more years because we're gonna lay enough stuff on them to not be able to do it themselves, and for our success, meaning your success. And here you go.
It's awesome,
right, Joe.
Yep.
Sound good, Joseph?
Yeah.
Awesome.
Love it.
Perfect.
Hey guys, great hanging out
Thanks
with
very
you
much.
this morning.
Have a great day.
Yep. Take care.
Thanks a
See
lot.
you.
all.
Bye bye.